Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here again with Eram, who's going to share a little bit more on her experience with nursing. And we thought we'd talk about getting a job as a nurse. So we've talked about in previous episodes on nursing school and the qualities of a good nurse and things like that. But what about actually the job hunt? And after you've kind of gone through your schooling, how easy or difficult is it to get a job? So if you wouldn't mind taking us through some of the considerations and the stuff you wish you knew earlier as you were job hunting from a nursing perspective, it would be great to hear what folks could look forward to or be challenged with as they go through the process. So what does a typical job hunt process for a nurse look like?
So typically when you're job hunting, you're going to see, you type in some words like nursing jobs for nurses, whatever you put in your search engine. And then whatever comes up is tons of jobs. But the problem is what's the right type of job, right? Because you've just graduated from nursing school. So technically speaking, it should be entry-level position as a nurse. Don't get me wrong, the jobs out there are also for, individuals who have had years of experience, such as myself, or those who have had like 20 plus years experience and onwards. But, there's tons of jobs that pop up. It could be travel nursing. It could be, come work with us in the US or come work up north. It could be come work at a Botox clinic or units looking for jobs. So, as an entry-level nurse, the first thing that most people do, and in terms of the instinct, is let's apply everywhere. But I think what's really important at this time is what are they looking for, and do you have those qualifications? Mm-hmm. So I think what's really important is the resume writing aspect and looking at yourself and seeing, okay, what is it that I have? And if I want this type of a position or a job, what is it that I need to do? What is it that I need to acquire? So I think that's those are some really important aspects, because if you're going for an advanced level job as a intro or an entry level nurse, you have to sit down and look at what would be required, as well as experiences, as well as no experience in the field versus having that experience in the clinical practicum, because clinical practicum experience is a good experience, but it's not like work experience.
Right. So we were talking before on something called the NCLEX exam. So how does that factor into the job search? So is that really just to complete your program, or do do employers take a look at your scores and your results of that, or can you describe a little bit about that process?
So the NCLEX exam is a must completion. So once you finish your program with the university that you're at, typically what happens is that your school will be sending off all your completion requirements over to your College of Nurses of Ontario, or to if you're in the United States, for example, they'll be sending it off to whatever state that you're part of in terms of, obtaining a license. So the NCLEX exam is what is necessary to be completed prior to obtaining your nursing license. And the NCLEX usually stands for National, I believe it's the National Licensure Examination. Okay. So it's the National Council examination that you have to write, and you have to successfully pass that examination. So when your schools send off all your grades or all of your completions in terms of like your courses and everything, and they state that you have successfully completed this program, you're ready to graduate, your council or your college of the Nurses of Ontario, the College of Nurses of Ontario, or the CNO for Ontario, will have a look at that and say, okay, this individual is eligible to write this examination, has that requirements to do so. They've gone to an accredited nursing school. They've completed the program, say in English or French or whatever it is. If it's in Canada, they need to see that they've successfully passed the program, and that they're going to be writing it in a few months. So the difference now is that you can actually book when you're ready.
Okay.
Because back in the day, before the NCLEX started, NCLEX is actually an American exam. They actually had the CRNE. So that was the Canadian Registered Nurses Examination. And that was actually set at specific times. So you only had a few chances to write that exam. You had 3 chances to write that exam. If you failed all 3 attempts, they would actually call you back and have a meeting in front of like a council, like a committee or a panel, to discuss why you failed that examination. Now it's a little different. They've actually become a little more lenient in the process. However, you could have as multiple attempts as possible to write this exam, but in doing so also requires time, effort, and money. So you'd have to be paying every single time that you write this exam. So when they deem you eligible to write this examination, it's now up to you to book when you're ready to write this exam. So now you actually have to study for this exam. So this includes all the years in nursing school that you've been through. There are prep courses and materials that you can purchase to study for this examination. And I can give a few recommendations. But all study styles also vary. Mm-hmm. So the examination is basically at a testing center. And again, it could vary on dates, times, and places where you go, depending on, I guess, where the nearest location is to you. And it's actually a computer scored examination. It's a computer generated examination. Okay. So, they'll ask you to put your things away. They'll take your fingerprints, they'll take palm prints. It's actually pretty intense. It's very, very serious. They'll ask you to sign forms. You're not allowed to have any equipment on you, no calculators, no pens, nothing at all. They will be monitoring you strictly in a very high security, stringent system. Will you be asked to seated into that examination room? And then you'll have a pair of headphones on, and they give you an option to use earbuds instead if you just don't want those. If you don't want the headphones, you can, put the earbuds in, or the those I guess, I don't know exactly what you call them, but they're to block out sound other than the headphones. Like if you really feel like
earplugs and stuff.
Yeah, earplugs. So, you have those, and then, they kind of give you a few questions, not really questions, but they're more like test questions for you to understand how the examination is going to work, because they have SATA, so select all that apply questions. They have multiple choice questions. They have a variety of questions that are available. So they kind of get you used to that. And that's something that's kind of expected for you to understand prior to writing this examination. So, you're in there, they'll tell you, okay, so you're going to be writing the exam. There's usually a total of about maybe 225 to 50 questions approximately.
Wow. Okay.
The minimum cutoff is 75 questions, but now due to the circumstances of COVID, they're trying to reduce the exposure times in these testing centers, and obviously to reduce transmission. So now I believe it's 65, but it's all computer generated. And so after you go through the mini test that they have at the beginning, they will actually warn you and say, okay, so now you're actually going to be starting the NCLEX exam, of which you have several hours to complete. So you'll go in, you'll write your exam, you take your time. There is no option to go back. So once you've clicked the answer and once you go forward, you have to continue going forward. It's not like back in the old days when I've written both exams for the sake of expanding myself and broadening my horizons to go international. But back in the day, you know, when we wrote our CRNE, it was paper, pencil, and Scantron, and you only had like maybe 3-4 hours tops with 200 and something questions. Sure. Now you get about 4 to 6 hours for, you know, and of course, unlimited attempts as well. So, you know, you're there, you're writing the exam, you can't go back on the question. Once you've clicked that answer and you hit forward, that's it, the answer is submitted.
Wow.
They will give you a series of questions. They're just random questions. These are all things that you should know as an entry-level nurse. And if they feel that you're answering high on a certain percentage on questions, the computer will automatically cut you off at that point. So if the computer feels you're doing well, in most circumstances, if they feel you're doing well, they'll cut you off at 75 questions.
Okay.
Yeah. If you keep going, don't panic. It's okay. You know, there's still room for improvement in that time period. So some people get caught up, say, at 80 questions. Maybe it just took 5 more questions for you to make it. It could be 90 questions. It could be 100 questions. Some people have to finish all questions, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily failed that exam. And so once you're done, and of course, this is a highly secured, stringent environment that's very tightly secured. There is a camera in each booth. So security will be watching you. And once you've completed the exam, sometimes there are extra optional research questions. So they'll give you clinical scenarios and you can they don't count towards the exam, but they give you an idea of how you would practice as a nurse. So they're very interesting questions. They're SATA questions, they're multiple choice questions. Sometimes they're matching questions as well. But in any case, once you've completed the exam, the security guard will come over, or, you know, the security team will ask you to say, okay, you have completed your exam. We're going to escort you out of the exam now. You can now go and get your things, and you're going to be leaving the facility immediately, because they don't want disclosure of the exam. That's why.
Sure. Wow, that's quite intense.
Yeah.
It seems almost like high security when you have security guards and things like that, can't bring anything and all that. And the interesting part that I found was that if you're doing well, they actually might stop the exam early because they realize, okay, yeah, they're probably in good shape. So it goes to like starting the exam out right, making sure that you're kind of cool, calm, and collected, and able to answer well at the beginning, and that makes things easier. But you have the possibility of still passing even if you have to complete every single question. I think that's new. I haven't heard of course systems that are there. For the exam, how much of it is covered in kind of the regular schooling that you have, or is there additional material or additional rigor, or is it more of like the prep exams are more like how they ask the questions and it can help you that? So how much of it is the test versus what you learn in your in nursing school?
Well, I think it's actually a mixture of both.
Okay.
However, being that it is more of an American-based exam, I would say it's more highly centered and focused on the prep materials that you have to study for it, just because there could be more extensive things that you need to study. Like, they won't teach you about arrhythmias completely in nursing school. So that's kind of like a responsibility that you have on your own, and you may be tested on that. Another thing would be, for example, labor and delivery, like maternity type of questions. Some of them, however, like, I mean, when you're doing the prep exams and the courses, you know, the questions are hard. They have a level of difficulty, but of course they want you to be able to have strong critical thinking skills, right? So that's the whole purpose of the exam, right? They have to know that you know your stuff and you're ready to practice. But of course, in addition with that NCLEX exam is how well you also perform when you're out in the field, right? However, I would heavily suggest not only nursing experience, but and your academia, your experience from your academics. But I think what's really important is to get the prep materials or the programs to help you study for this exam, just because they'll give you the information on the tidbits on the style and presentation of the questions, how to answer the questions, why you would select certain answers versus the other ones that you wouldn't select. So that's my advice on it.
Cool. And this is a purely kind of computer-based written exam. There's no kind of clinical portion where they would escort you to another part of it and say, like, diagnose this person.
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay, so after that, what would you suggest is kind of a good, I guess, time frame to start studying for this thing? Is that something where after you've done your nursing school, really you can over a weekend, or is it like months, or is it like, no, you should start in year one studying for this thing?
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea to start from day one.
Sure.
But remember, you're going to be so busy that you're going to be, focused on clinicals. You're going to be focused on, taking your courses and studying for exams and writing that big paper or doing that major research paper that you have to submit. So I wouldn't really say from day one or year one. Can it be done over a weekend? In a rare instance, can someone actually do that? Sure. Some people decide to take a few months off prior to writing that exam, and that's totally fine too, because again, each person with their circumstance. So that's understandable. Most people typically take about a few months, sometimes only 1 month. And that's if you're religiously studying every single day.
Right.
And you're doing practice questions. So the key is doing practice questions. And I would also say, what really helps is when you're answering the questions and when they give you a score at the end of your test. So you have options with the programs that I'm about to introduce you to and explain to you about, is you have options in terms of the number of questions you want to test yourself on every single day.
Okay.
So some people choose 80, some people do 100, some people just go down into 50, and some people really slow down and do maybe 10 to 25 questions a day.
Okay.
I wouldn't really worry about the score at the end. If you have a high score, it probably means you have a good understanding. If you have a low score, it just means you need some areas of improvement. But the score and the number, I wouldn't worry about. Don't worry about the score and the number that you have in terms of, like, the end of that practice test that you have. Focus on what is it that you got wrong and how can you improve on that. Study the rationales behind the answer. Why is it this answer and not that answer? That's really important to understand in answering the questions, but also applying it to your, your nursing practice in the future. So I think that's really important. And, you had asked earlier if NCLEX scores really do count in job interviews. They don't count.
Okay.
No. The main important thing is, did you pass the examination and do you have your license? Once you successfully pass this exam, those scores in each area, whatever they've tested you on, are going to be submitted to your council if you're in the United States, or they're going to be submitted to the College of Nurses of Ontario, or whatever affiliated college you are, affiliated based on the province you live in. And they'll say, okay, this is a pass, so we're now going to administer the license to you. And of course, there's a separate fee for that license as well.
So really, this is a pass-fail type of exam where you pass, and it might not be a 50% pass. It might be like a 75, 80% pass or whatever. But once you get beyond that, whether even if you got perfect, it probably wouldn't influence things much in terms of jobs hunt, and then additional licensing. But so a lot of effort. If you were to kind of suggest someone to kind of book their appointment in advance, like how many months would you suggest? Is it like a 3 months, 4 month, or like it's really, I guess, based on people's learning styles and how comfortable they are with the material?
Yes, I think it's based on learning styles and how comfortable you are with the material, whether you have short-term versus long-term memory. And I think it's also the motivation.
Sure.
So say if you're only able to, obtain an exam appointment in, say, 2 months, but you wanted it to be in 4 months. If you're only able to obtain that appointment in 2 months, say in the exams in the morning or the afternoon or whatever the case may be, you need to be able to motivate yourself to say, okay, I also have a part-time job, so I'm going to dedicate these days off into studying, and this is how I'm going to study, and this is what I'm going to do. So that's my piece of advice into it.
Cool. So after you've taken your NCLEX and hopefully you've gone through all of that rigor and paid the licensing fee, and now you're licensed and registered, and then that's the point where you can start applying as kind of a registered nurse for all of those different positions. So is it kind of like a standard job search where you just go on like job boards like Indeed and LinkedIn and things like that, or are there like different areas specific for a nurse where they would go looking for roles and jobs?
So, I mean, now that you have the big RN title, so congratulations. Now that you finally have that title, and you can add that at the end of your name, which is awesome. So you can use LinkedIn, you can use Indeed, you can use, Google job search, you can use ZipRecruiter, whatever you want to use. Sometimes actually going on the hospital websites also help. They have options for, external and internal applicants. And the one that you're obviously going to click on is the external applicants link.
Right.
So that's where you start your job hunt. And, you don't need to state that you've passed your NCLEX exam. I mean, unless, you're someone that wrote your CRNE and you want to state it on there, that you did both exams, that's fine too. Mm-hmm. But it's the main thing that counts is, where are you licensed on your resume? So if you're licensed in Ontario, then you would state you're in good standing with the College of Nurses in Ontario, and that you have an RN license and you're licensed in Ontario. But if you're additionally licensed elsewhere, then you can say, for instance, British Columbia as well, licensed in Ontario and British Columbia, licensed in Ontario and New Jersey. That's what's most important. It's not even the score or the fact that I wrote the NCLEX exam. It's like, okay, you wrote the NCLEX exam, but do you actually have the license? Like, did you pay the fee for the license? That's what's, important. And of course, are you in good standing? Not that you have, that you're being reprimanded for your license, not that you have a judgment against you on your license, that's what's really important. So now that you have your license, you've written the exam, the question is how do you, go about in applying jobs? So you can go on different search engines, you can go on hospital websites. Sometimes what's also useful is I find that if you've worked or you've had, a clinical practicum or a placement, and you had a good rapport with the unit manager, you can actually reach out to them and ask them, are you looking for someone? Are you interested in hiring a new grad? I graduated, I wrote my NCLEX exam successfully. I now have my license. If you're not hiring right now, please consider me for the future. And if they don't respond right away, that's okay too. I mean, they may eventually respond, but keep applying everywhere. Just go around and just keep applying. It doesn't hurt to apply to other roles. At least you tried. That's what's really, really important, is that you made that attempt, you made that effort. But also you have to look realistically what they're asking for. If you're not experienced as a Botox injector, well, maybe chances are they're probably not going to hire you for that. If you're someone that has not had 5 years of experience, you're probably not going to be considered for that job, as opposed to someone who has had 5 to 10 years of experience and probably has, a few more little qualifications on their resume. But does that mean that it should, restrict you from applying to other jobs? No, absolutely not. This is how the experience builds. You have to get out there. You need to, go out there. And they're always looking for nurses. Nursing is a profession where they're always in high demand. They're always looking for nurses everywhere. It could be now with the pandemic, they're looking for public health nurses, but a lot of those positions have been filled because they've been looking for more like, individuals with a couple of years of experience. Mm-hmm. But they're looking for, new grads and new individuals in like, cardiology, acute medicine, general medicine, nephrology units. There's, hospitals that are being expanded. For example, there's Humber River Hospital. There's Mackenzie Health with the Cortellucci Center. They're expanding and opening up these new centers. So they're looking for people. And so I would heavily encourage, for individuals to just go out there. And if there's places that are having, new expansions everywhere, put your resume in.
It's amazing. And would you say it's worthwhile to start applying even before you pass your NCLEX exam, or is it not even worthwhile because they really focus on, are you registered and licensed before they even start taking a look at you?
I mean, it's not wrong. I mean, again, if you were at a clinical practicum at a nursing home, on a unit, wherever it may have been, a clinic, and if the manager states to you, okay, well, I'll keep you in consideration, provided that, and the condition is, it's a conditional offer, right, that, they may allow you to have a temporary license. Sometimes that may work too. But again, you have to get in touch with the council, or you have to get in touch with your College of Nurses and ask them what the procedure is with that. Sometimes they do grant it and other times not. But most places, I would say 99% of the time, they want to ensure that the individual that they're hiring has successfully passed their NCLEX exam, but has also obtained a license to practice legally. It's all about legality.
Of course, yeah. I guess for that license, and you mentioned it's based on kind of province or state in the US, like how difficult or challenging is, let's say you got licensed in Ontario, but I want to move to BC, right? How difficult is it for me to kind of get a new license in the other one? Or do I have to rewrite another NCLEX or a different one? Or how does that process, if you know?
As far as I know, there is definitely no extra requirement to write another NCLEX exam. Okay. You've written the exam, you have the license. But in terms of transferring licenses is a bit of a different story. So in order to practice in British Columbia, you have to have, so if you're transferring, say, from Ontario to British Columbia, you'd have to get in touch with the college there and ask them what the process would be in either transferring your license or obtaining a new license. So they probably would need a copy of your Ontario license. Maybe they want to have a look at, the scores from your NCLEX exam. So they have to obtain it from the college. And then they probably would just have to process it from there, just to make sure, just to ensure that the individual that's going to be licensed to practice there has, graduated from an accredited nursing college or university, that the person has passed the NCLEX exam, that the person actually and legitimately has a license in Ontario and they've been practicing there. And, if they're coming into the province to practice in British Columbia, again, it's all about legality.
Right.
So I would heavily suggest that you contact the college. In the United States, it's a little different. And it's also based on state, because each state, they have what's called walkthrough states, and then there's the non-walkthrough states. And they're still trying to work on that. So some licenses, if you're licensed in the United States already, you can actually transfer your license to that state without heavy troubles. It might just be a few paperwork, just a bit of paperwork involved. But if you're going from Canada to the United States and you're going to a specific state, each state has its requirements. So if you didn't write a, NCLEX exam, you're going to have to get in touch with that council. You're going to have to, get your, a copy of your degree, a copy of your current license in Ontario, whatever it is, have all that accreditation stuff sent down to that council. They may ask you to take a small online class on, say, for example, child abuse. It may be on ethics. It really depends on the state. They may ask you to write a jurisprudence exam based on like laws. It would be probably like an online exam, maybe a small course where you write like a 10, 15 question quiz, obtain those certificates. They may need proof of, like a scanned copy of your passport. If you're actually planning to reside in the United States, for example, are you a permanent resident? Or are you a conditional permanent resident? Are you a work permit? What exactly is it? They might want copies of that. Once they've gone through that, then they'll approve you to write your NCLEX, or if you've already written the NCLEX and they've seen that, they've successfully passed the exam, they have a license, they were actively practicing, now they just want to transfer over here, then they'll dispense a parchment, or what they call a small parchment, or a copy of a license. And then of course you can take matters from there and then start applying to healthcare facilities and hospitals in the United States or in that specific state.
Cool. So it sounds like it really depends province to province, state by state. Some of them make it easier depending on what is kind of at the same level of regulations or accreditation or whatever for that particular state. Some of them are a little bit more involved where you might actually have to take additional courses or certifications and things like that. So yeah, so just be aware if you're licensed in a different state or province that if you're moving, you might need to go through a few things in order to do that. So, all right. So if you've been applying to jobs, you have a resume, you've been putting it out there, sending out some cover letters. Hopefully you've leveraged your network in terms of connecting with folks to see if there's any opportunities there. But what are some of the other considerations for that job search that you would have in terms of other ways to be successful, to help your resume stand out or things like that? Or is there anything that you'd have suggestions for in that regard?
Well, I don't think it hurts to put an objective on there, like, what is your objective? What is your career goal? Something very simple, straightforward, that you're somebody that's, willing to be committed into the profession, and you're looking for a job, and you're doing that through, the skills that you have. That's that's a very shortened version of it. The other thing is your education. If you're someone direct from high school going into nursing, you don't need to state that you have your OSSD or anything like that. You just need to state your post-secondary education. If you've done a graduate degree, for individuals that are watching this podcast right now and you have a graduate degree, that's really important to put on there as well. Other things would be professional certifications and licenses. So definitely you're a member of the College of Nurses of Ontario, or you're a member of a college or a council in the United States. It may be a professional council that you're part of. Are you certified in basic life support? Do you have advanced life support? Do you have pediatric advanced life support? Again, it really varies on the positions that you're applying for, because that's what a lot of individuals are looking for. A lot of these organizations, hiring managers, HR, this is what they're looking for. This is their checklist of what they're looking for. I think what's also important is, did you volunteer? You can just quickly, just list that. And I think another thing that's really important is, again, if you're a fresh new hire, your clinical practicum experiences. So your clinical rotations, your clinical practicum experiences, where were you, what city, or, the city/province, as well as the time period that you were there, and maybe just briefly list, a few of the things that you did during your, your practicums. That might be really, really helpful as well. I think another thing is that, are you multilingual? They usually look for people that are, bilingual, multilingual. It usually helps, especially when you're providing care for patients. They usually acknowledge that quite a bit. Does that up your game a bit? A little bit, yeah. But again, you still have to have the qualifications that they're looking for. Again, basic life support is a big requirement for almost all nursing positions. You need to have that 100%.
Cool. So doing a little bit more than just the standard schooling. So little certifications like life support or volunteering. Languages are always good, though it's kind of hard for someone to pick up a language quickly. So hopefully they can use that to their advantage, and that'll help them become a little bit more competitive within the job search. So if someone now has an interview and say, hey, we want to bring you in for an interview next Tuesday or whatever date it is, then what would you suggest for folks to do to kind of prepare for that interview and do in that interview?
So, okay, so you got called for an interview. So again, congratulations. So now this is the next step to get in. So the things that you need to understand are some of the interviews that I had to go through required a written test.
Okay.
And some of them also required a small clinical simulation post-interview or prior to the interview. So, you want to get information on that. And of course, they'll disclose that to you prior to, that you'll have to write an exam or you'll have to write a test. So that's usually for more specialized positions, and they would expect that you have the background and the knowledge. So it's a test that they will have one of their clinical practice leaders or their educators grade that test. But if you're just having a generalized interview, what you do need to be prepared for is print extra copies of your resume just in case. Have a cover letter ready. Make sure you pick out what you're going to wear. Find out the location exactly of the organization. You want to arrive early. You don't want to be late. If you're going to be late, call them, let them know what's going on. You're stuck in traffic. Did the train break down? Whatever the case is, you have to be completely honest, because that's something that they really appreciate.
Cool.
Honesty is very important. And that can also, give off vibes about your character. But if you're going to be having an interview coming up, again, you want to find out, what is the position for? Where is it at? If it's a part-time, casual, temporary, or full-time permanent position. Some of the questions they might ask during an interview are basic questions like, they'll usually ask, tell me about yourself. I'm reading your resume here. Tell me about yourself. You did a practicum over at Sick Kids. What did you do there? You went to Ryerson, or you went to U of T Bloomberg School of Nursing. How did you like it? Things like that. What was your favorite class? What was your favorite course? What was your least favorite course? Why? They might just want to get to know you as a person. They'll obviously see that you have a copy of your license. They'll want a license number. You can take a photocopy of your license and bring it in if you want in a small little folder. But they're probably going to be retrieving that. And when you apply online, they'll probably ask for your license number. They will definitely ask for that. But other questions they'll probably ask is definitely about conflict resolution. So they'll probably ask questions like along the lines of, have you ever gotten into a dispute with somebody? And if so, how was that resolved? Or describe a time where you were involved in a conflict, and how did you go about that? How did you work together to resolve that conflict? So that's something that they're really looking for, because of course, in any world, which is not ideal, no matter what profession you choose, there's always going to be conflict. Right. So they want to see your capabilities in terms of how you're able to resolve the smallest things to the biggest things. It's all about challenge, because nursing in itself is a very challenging profession. At hand, it's not only mentally and sometimes emotionally challenging, but it can also be physically challenging too, especially if you're working in a very fast-paced environment like myself, who works in emergency trauma resuscitative services. I think another thing that they'll definitely ask, and several things they may ask are clinical-based questions. Like they'll give you a scenario about a patient, and they'll say, okay, so this is what's happening to the patient. So you as the nurse, what are you going to do? Or you notice some abnormal labs. Can you explain why these labs are abnormal? And what do you think the expected treatment is? What the nursing interventions are? And what are the expected medical interventions are? So, these are things that you obviously would have known not only through nursing school and through studying through your academia, but it's a bit of a boost when you study for your NCLEX exam.
Cool. So just out of curiosity, so you mentioned know what you're gonna wear. What do you typically wear? Like it's not a necessarily clinical setting. Is it more like a business setting where you're wearing like a suit type of thing, or is it more like as if you're in the hospital? I'm just curious.
I would not recommend wearing scrubs. I do get that. Yeah. I do get if you're really enthusiastic, and that's awesome. And thumbs up to all of you out there, who are ready to put those scrubs on and get going out in the field. But, this is very professional, and you have to show your professional side. So business casual is usually recommended. So if for the gents out there, suit, tie, dress pants, dress shirt, tie. If you don't want to wear a tie, that's fine. Dress shoes, dress pants, dress shirt. For the ladies, I would say be very mindful of what you're going to be wearing. Don't over glamorize your makeup. Nice and simple. Hairstyle should be very simple. Try to be mindful in terms of appearance, because again, you want to look really professional. Like if you have like 15 earrings on here, again, I think that looks awesome. But again, you have to look at the professional standpoint of things. I mean, they are going to be looking at your skills and your abilities, but again, they will look at you professionally, because it is an appearance sometimes that's representative of their organization. So, you want to kind of keep it nice, cool, calm, and simple. It's a little different when you're hired in, but again, there's also the safety that's involved with wearing a lot of jewelry and things like that when you're working on the job. So, just nice and simple. So simple jewelry, just maybe one pair of earrings is enough. A simple hairstyle. Don't over glamorize with the makeup, please. And just, business casual. So like, it could be a dress shirt with a blazer and dress pants and flats. Not too overpowering colors is my recommendation, like not pastel-y colors. Red is a really powerful color. If you're going to be wearing red, you might want to consider if you're going to be, is that going to be covered up with a blazer, or, what exactly? So normally I would say stay away from the red. I mean, it's an awesome color, but I would stay away from that. Nice, simple, cool, calming colors. Just basic, white, gray, brown, maybe a light blue, something like very calming to the eye.
Mm-hmm. In your experience, how many interviews do you typically go through? Is it just kind of like one with kind of a big panel, or are there like different types of interviews that you go through as well, different stages of interviews?
Well, from my personal experience, I've had to write exams. I've also had clinical scenarios. They've given me tours of the actual department. So, okay, if you got hired here, this is basically where you'd be working, and this is what the department kind of looks like. They definitely had, well, at least when I got interviewed, I had a panel of individuals interviewing me. So it was typically the manager. It was a couple of the advanced practice nurses. These are individuals that have masters and PhDs. We also have a clinical practice leaders that will interview, and HR, individuals from HR as well. Sometimes it's also the administrative part of the department or the team. These are nursing administrators, so they kind of work part of the team in terms of, and nursing manager, the additional nursing managers, assistant nursing managers that will take part in it. It's technically most of the time a panel. Very rarely will you have one individual interviewing you. At most, two. For most entry-level positions, maybe 2 or 3. But I've had usually panels of individuals. Sometimes I've even had physicians come into the panel and actually ask me questions as well. So that's a rare instance, but I've had that happen to me.
Cool. So hopefully you've done well and practiced your interviews and gone through that process, and then you get an offer. So congrats to you on that. But what are some other things that you might suggest to folks to kind of improve their chances in the whole job search? Are there any other areas? So we talked about talking to folks in your curriculum, some of the preceptors that you've had in your clinicals and whatever, just to kind of build those connections. Probably alumni are probably a useful source. Are there other suggestions that you'd have on for someone who's on the job hunt and trying to kind of increase their probability of landing something?
Well, I mean, you could always ask the nurses that are already out there in the field working. Sometimes they might know if there's, a department or the department they're working in, they're hiring. Again, alumni are an excellent resource to, give you insight on things. So again, those are the alumni, the individuals that are working out in the field. But I think what's really important is, and I say this very strongly when I say this, it's is references.
Okay.
You need to have a strong reference, because at the end of an interview, usually a good sign is, can we have a list of your references? They'll send you a form via email, or if you have it ready ahead of time, you can say, here are my references. If they say, okay, well, we'll be in touch with you and then you can just give them the references ahead of time. But of course, you have to contact your references in advance and say, I'm applying to a few jobs. Is it okay if I put your name down? Always get consent prior to. And I say this as someone who also gives references, because if I get a phone call or an email from somewhere, and if I don't honestly remember you, I'm going to be like, okay, who is this person again? Who am I giving a reference for? I need to know. Typically, your references will want to know. And as someone, like I said, who gives out references is, who you are. So tell me who you are, what is the reference for? So if it's for work, who is it that's going to be contacting me? And of course, I'll give a mode of communication. So is it going to be phone or email? And what do I expect? Is it going to be a form I have to fill out? Are they going to be calling me? Is it something I need to email back to them? Because your references are going to be individuals who are busy people too, right? They're individuals that are working out there, that are doing this, that are doing that. So, you want to have a strong list of references. And typically when they ask for references, it's about 2 to 3 references.
That's amazing. And I think that goes back to when you are in those clinicals, really take the time to manage expectations, understand what expectations are, make a good impression, do your job, and do it well. Because when people see you, when people remember you, and hopefully they remember you for the right things, not on the screw ups or anything, then that's when references can actually be good. So I think that's great advice and words of wisdom. So I think we've covered a lot of information in this podcast on how to get a job as a nurse. Are there any other kind of parting remarks or different things that you might want to suggest to folks as they are on the job search for finding a role in nursing?
So I actually have a few things. Okay. So a quick few things are, when you're out in your clinical practicums, make a good rapport with the staff there, because you never know, you might get hired in there. You might have to end up working with them. Work as if you're really dedicated and committed to it, because people are going to be watching you, especially as a student, especially in your final year, because you're going to be not completely on your own. You're going to still have your preceptor watching and kind of hovering and helicoptering a bit, but make sure that you're doing a good job, like you said, but you want to make the impression that you're someone that's dedicated and committing to the profession. And of course, to your patients, that's really important. If you're doing this profession, you have to make sure this is something you really want to do, and that you're really out there to help somebody who's in need, because tomorrow that could be you, right? And you'd want the same treatment back in return as well. So have a good rapport with the staff, the nursing manager, and of course your professors, because sometimes as new grads, if you don't have a reference, say if your preceptor moved far away and you don't have, you've lost contact with them, it happens. The faculty advisor or professors are individuals that can probably speak on your behalf and your performance and everything. The other thing I also just wanted to state was I was going to actually mention the useful programs for individuals to use to study. Right. So again, it could be for your NCLEX exam, that is. So it could be your textbooks. It could be a book called Saunders. That's a really thick one. So you're probably going to need a few months to study that one. That one is filled with information, lots of useful information. It's a great resource even to look at after you're done writing the NCLEX exam, just for reference. If you're really stuck on time, there's I believe there's the Kaplan. Kaplan is an online resource. They also have books too that you can use. And then there's Mark Climack, the audio. You can look them up online. I think those are also available. And another one that's really good is UWorld. UWorld is an excellent resource that will give you the style of the questions. It'll explain the rationales behind the answers, why you got what you got incorrect versus correct. And remember, please don't worry about the score that you get at the end of these practice tests, because what matters is that you understand the material. Don't worry about the score. I know it's natural. It's a natural anxiety that we all have, but don't worry about numbers. Worry about what you're studying, why you're studying it. The rationale behind it is really important, and that's how you can apply your critical thinking. And then when the exam comes up, you'll find that the questions are actually much more easier than what you were studying for. So that's just my word and piece of advice for everybody.
I think that's amazing. And yeah, really going for the learning versus the grade or the number that you get, I think is the most important thing, because when you do it for the learning, then the numbers just naturally increase on their own. So I think that's great, and good luck to all those that have graduated or are headed towards taking their NCLEX exam and gonna venture out into the working world and join the nursing profession. So congrats for all the people who are there, and yeah, best of luck. And hopefully you found some useful information in this podcast. Thanks a lot, Eram, for joining us again, and hopefully we'll see you in a future episode.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.